Hey, fellow architects, it's me, Mario. And if you have not guessed it already, tonight we're going to talk about Architects of the West Kingdom, one of the three games of the trilogy of the West Kingdom by Garfield Games. I like them all. I think they are a bit, they're not heavy enough normally for me, but this one actually got me a lot recently. I played like 20 games in less than 2 weeks, I think. And I got pretty good at it because right now I am the number one player in the world on BGA. Well, that doesn't mean much, does it? But at least it means that I feel entitled to talk about this game a bit and share with you all what my strategy has been, what the game revolves around, in my opinion at least. I spoke with one of the designers too, just a bit on Discord. So I feel like I have a decent grasp on the game right now, at least on the meta that you can find on BGA. One big caveat though, I'm going to talk about 4P games only. As you probably know if you're following the channel already, I love playing games, Euro games in 4 players. I think it's basically my favorite player count. I love it for many reasons that I will not explain here. But everything that I'm saying in the video refers to 4 player games, and especially 4 player games with a symmetric start. You can start with asymmetric factions. I don't play with them because I think they nudge you too much in direction before the game even starts. But I know people have a lot of different opinions on that. So that's just how I play the game and how I've been winning a lot. So that's it. Let's start off with saying the first point that I think it's probably the most important to understand architects. Architects is not an engine building game. It might seem like it because I mean you're hiring apprentices, you're getting buildings that um, get you stuff and yada yada, but it's really there's not enough time in a game to build up an engine. So actually what you're doing is that you have cards that give you small incentives toward a certain kind of play style, and that's it. So you have to skew your game a little bit, sometimes even a lot more than a little bit, but it's not really an engine building game. You're not like getting assets that over time will get you better at the game. You just scramble up something, some good plan with the resources that you can get, and then you just go hard on collecting resources and converting them into points thanks to buildings. Mostly. I don't mean that that's all you're doing in the game, otherwise it would be pretty boring and I wouldn't have played it a lot. But mostly that's what you do. The most interesting part about architects is how you follow those like little nudges, little incentives that you get from cards and try to change and warp your game a bit around it while knowing that the game is fucking fast. Another important thing is that I think that the starting building you have in your hand, the starting buildings, are more important than your starting apprentice, mainly because of what I've already said. I don't think this is an engine building game, and knowing all the incentives you get from a certain starting position is important, and you get 3 buildings and only 1 apprentice, so I think you should be guided more by your starting buildings. Another important thing to know is that the icon on the apprentices is a lot of the time more important than what they do. It's not always true, of course, but you have to keep in mind that having the right icons is what you will let you build stuff. And in my opinion, you just get apprentices to get icons mainly. Sometimes you can get good combos, like in this game I got 2 squires and that's pretty good. Sometimes you can get a lot of debt collectors and that's also pretty good. But I think that buildings are really the centerpiece of the game. Well, we are architects, right? So always try to consider the icon on the top left corner of your apprentices. I try to not have multiple of one kind, but sometimes it happens if they combo well, so it depends a lot. And the big thing you do during the game, of course, is accumulating resources. We are going to talk a bit more about it when we are gonna talk a bit about capturing other meeples. But basically, by accumulating meeples on one spot, you get a lot of resources at a way better rate, so that the third action is basically 3 times the first one. So it's pretty easy to see why getting a lot of meeples on the same spot is important. I a lot of the time see players not doing that because they are scared they are going to get captured, but as we are going to see, capturing is actually not that convenient a lot of the time. So forcing the other players to capture you is actually a better strategy overall. So just hammer these spaces, the four spaces where you can get resources, especially the mines. The mines are really important because if the other players will not stop you, you can basically just gain points. And if you can get 3 points for one action, like when you place the sixth meeple over here, that's already incredibly good. Like it's half of a building or almost a half of a building just by placing a guy here without having to spend resources. That's very good. So all these four spaces are really good. Just keep hammering them. And if you don't have a plan for capturing, just let the other players capture you. Again, we're going to talk about it soon enough. The second most important point I want to talk about is that tempo is king in this game. Once again, the games are pretty fast. Pretty much all of my games fall in between 30 and 35 actions total per player, which is not a lot. It seems like a lot, but it's not a lot. In that time frame, you can do some stuff, and you have to know the game. You have to know the pace of the game first and foremost to know what you can achieve in a game. Of course, you also need to adapt. That's why tempo is king. You need to adapt. So if the other players are slowing down the game a lot, you should also try to follow them a bit and adjust your game, your overall game around it. The winning player in Architect normally doesn't win by a lot of points. You win by a few points just because your timing is perfect. So you try to end the game, and the last few action that you do will net you quite a lot of points. That's what you're trying to achieve. You can lose if you try to plan for the long game, and the game ends, and you still have something like 3 buildings that you wanted to build and the resources for them, and you were not able to play them. So the player who were able, the players or player who were or was able to finish the game with just enough resources and the right number of buildings built will probably win the game. Another thing that can happen though is that you rush the game too much while the other players don't follow you along. And at that point, you might finish the cathedral and find yourself with nothing to do. You will need a lot of time to accumulate resources once again. You need time to draw the building cards you need to build some of the buildings. So um, you don't have to plan for the long game, but you don't even need to rush the game, and that's it. If you rush the game, you need a plan to always get points in the last few actions. A common strategy is keeping some resources to convert in reputation if you're already on like 8 or 9 reputation, so you can get points out of it. Another strategy is just getting gold. Another strategy is having at least one shipbuilding to build at the end of it all. Basically, you really want to finish the game with exactly the last building action you needed to win. It's not that easy. You will not always do it, but that's the most important thing. Tempo is king. You have to adapt to the other player's pace and to the rhythm of the game overall. Keep in mind that 30-35 actions are good enough, and keep in mind that a good plan might be to build something like 5 or 6 buildings overall, but we're going to discuss about strategies a bit later on. For now, just remember that tempo is king and you need to keep that in mind. This game is fast and you need to adapt to it. The third part is on buildings and cathedral, because we said that tempo is king, and how do you control tempo? There are actually 2 ways. The first one is right in your face, and that's building or helping to build the cathedral. So building buildings and helping the cathedral will of course control the tempo of the game because you're actually advancing the game. The second way to control the tempo is by capturing the other meeples. We're going to talk about capturing a bit later, but of course, if you capture some meeples, you are making the game go longer because the other players cannot get um, big amount of resources each time they hit one of the spots over here. Talking a bit more about buildings overall, do you have to build early? Ah, no, but kinda. It depends a lot. So, it's not good to get your meeples stuck on the guild hall, of course. At the beginning of the game, it might seem like it's not that big of a cost, but later on, it can be actually quite costly because the other players will capture your workers. You might not want to free them up because you don't want to spend the coins or you don't want to take the penalty. You may find yourself with a lot of meeples in a lot of different spots on the map. And at that point, you might run low, like you have 5 workers or something like that, and you get scared. And if you have a lot of them stuck in the guild hall, you will not get them back at any time during the game. So, building early is not that great, but there's a big but. If you have some of the buildings that will help you a bit, like let's say if you have one of the lumber camps of all the other buildings that will give you resources, then playing one early enough, it's not that bad. I wouldn't say very early, but early enough is good. In this game, for example, I played the drafting room really early. Drafting room is really good because it lets you draw 2 cards, and once you draw 2 more cards, you can actually adjust your plans around them. So, some of the buildings is alright to build them early, some other not. Um, it's not very good to rush the cathedral as instantly when you get the first gold. It's actually pretty bad. I know that you might be enticed by the favors, or how are they called? Reward cards from the cathedral because they are a limited amount, and if you don't go fastish on the cathedral, you might miss them. But actually, you want to go on the cathedral if you're pretty confident you can reach like level 4 before pretty much everybody else. So you actually want to accumulate a bit of resources and then you have to commit to the cathedral. So even going on the cathedral too early is not that good, but going early enough to get, if you want to go to the top, to get all 5 of the cards, of the reward cards, it's pretty good. You cannot always do that if the other players are also interested in the cathedral, but going for the cathedral early is not that bad, but you don't want to like take 3 steps onto it and then you have to start back getting resources. You have 3 meeples stuck here, you start back getting resources, you don't know which building you got because you spent all the 3 starting ones on the cathedral. That's a very bad position to be in, and I find a lot of players find themselves into this kind of position. So the cathedral is good to actually control tempo. I think it's the easiest way to control tempo in a game. And actually, the last step, well, the first one, sorry, the first step for 1 gold is very good at the end of the game if you need to rush the game because before somebody else get too many points and you've already like exhausted all your buildings or something. It's actually a very good move to do towards the end of the game to accelerate the game a bit. But normally, it's not that you want to get 3 meeples stuck over here early enough. Just think about the buildings you have and draw more. Drawing buildings at the start of the game is actually pretty good. Very good, I would say. You start with 3. You can get other 3 by just getting 1 meeple here and then 2. And then you can think about your overall strategy. Of course, it doesn't always go like that. Sometimes you really want to hire somebody, then take 2 buildings at the same time, then build something, then maybe get 2 buildings again. It depends a lot. But drawing buildings close to the start of the game is actually pretty good. Once again, because buildings, along with apprentices, but I think buildings can be even more important, can shape your overall strategy. In most of my games, I try to build, I try to not get too many buildings in my hand. Like, it's not that I build 5 and I try to get 8 in my hand just to choose between them. I try to get 6, maybe 7 sometimes, but normally 6, and try to adjust my plan around them in some way. I'm going to talk about this specific game a bit at the end of the video just to show what I did, to show you what I did, but drawing early enough is pretty good. Also, of course, in most of your games, the bulk of your points are going to come from buildings and from the cathedral. So they are very, very, very important. And they give you a strategic direction, once again, often enough, along with apprentices, or even they can be even more important than them. The fourth point is the other way to control the pace of a game, which is capturing meeples. And once again, capturing is very good at slowing the game down, but you don't do that randomly. You just don't capture other meeple from other players just because you want to keep them honest. That's not what you do. It's better to do your own plan at that point. You need a proper plan to capture other players' meeples. It's not something that it's good in a vacuum. I will show you why real quick. Let's compare like three capturing action with three silversmith actions. There are a lot of other things that can be said about silversmith and town center, but just compare them right now for the amount of coins that you can get. If you place three meeples on the silversmith, that's going to be 9 coins for you, right? 2 for the first one, plus 3, plus 4. That's a total of 9 coins. Let's compare it to capturing other players' meeples, which is something that I see a lot of the time happening by capturing only 3 meeples. But let's just compare a good case, something that a lot of players say that it's good. Let's compare it to capturing 4 meeples. So you capture 4 meeples with the first guy, you spend 1 coins, you get 4. Then you capture once again 8 meeple, which is actually not that easy to do. You spend 2 coins more, and then you get 8 meeples. Then on your third action, you go to the guardhouse and deliver those freshly baked meeples. Now you gain 12 coins, but you actually spent 3 to get them. So that's 9 coins for capturing 12 meeples. And once again, capturing 12 meeples, it's not always easy. What I see a lot of the time people doing is capturing 3 and then capturing maybe 6 or 7. That's actually very bad. It's not something you should do. You should do it only if you have incentives towards it. So let's try to take a look at why capturing can be good. Well, the first thing to look at is if you have reputation equal to 3 or lower. Then the math changes because the first coin that you spend in each action capturing meeples is for free. So you get 2 coins more. Kudos on you. Or maybe you have, what's her name? The conspirator? I think it's conspirator. I might misremember the name. Let's see if it's in this game or not. It's not in this game. She's not in this game. She's a lady that will get you a discount on the town center. Then if you have that one, okay, the math is good. The math is actually better. It's similar to having the jeweler and going to the silversmith. You basically gain 1 coin each time to go to the town center. So if you both have the conspirator or conspirator, I'm so bad at English. If you want to watch a video, by the way, with an awesome pronunciation, just watch the Il Neozelandese video. I might actually put the link in the description. He made a video years ago, and I watched it, I think 3 or 4 times back in the days, about strategy in architects, and he's got a New Zealand Kiwi accent, which is awesome. I spent a year in New Zealand doing a working holiday, and I just love their accent. They say architects, they say depths instead of depths. Yeah, I just love Kiwi accent. So go and watch that video if you want to. But back to our video. So you want some incentives. So that's part of what can make capturing meeples good. But you need something else. You need a way to use those coins, because if you don't have a proper plan, you will not find a way to use those coins. There are not that many ways to convert coins into points in architects, actually. So that's also why capturing is not great a lot of the time. So an easy way is to flip debts. So if you're a bad guy and you get debts, or if you just went to the black market and found yourself in the guardhouse at the wrong time, you're going to get debts. And paying back debts is actually a good way to convert those coins. For 6 coins, you basically get a bump on reputation and 2 points, which is not bad. It's not a bad conversion at all. If you can get 4 or even better, 5 coins per action. Um, so that's something good. You can also free all of your meeples, but that's not an option you're going to take a lot of the time. It's something that you probably do if you're a good guy, not if you're an evil guy. And you can also get apprentices, which is something that becomes better once you slow the game down thanks to capturing meeple. You see where this is going? So capturing meeple slows the game down, gives you coins. With those coins, you can hire apprentices. And those apprentices are going to get better the longer the game goes, of course, because they are like a bit of an engine. Remember, this is not properly an engine building game, but they can do a bit of an engine for you. And the last thing you can spend your coins on is, of course, the black market. And this is where you should go a lot, in my opinion, if you capture other players' meeples. It's all a combo, right? Because you get coins, you can spend them in the black market, and the black market does two things. The black market gives you debts, probably, that you can pay back with the coins that you get. The black market gets you in the lower part of the reputation track, which means that the town center will get cheaper for you, and paying back for debts is also going to be cheaper for you. It all sounds good, right? And also, capturing meeple means that you have control over the guardhouse, and sometimes you can go to the black market when the other players will have their meeple in the guardhouse, so you can actually punish them thanks to your capturing and black market strategy. So what's the problem with this strategy? It takes a lot of time and a lot of efforts, and you need to be pretty good to play it. You cannot just play it and it happens that you win. You actually need to have a proper plan. Normally, since it's so slow, you are going to build twice or maybe thrice in the game, which means that you really need buildings like, well, the palace is actually a bad example, but you need buildings that cost a lot of resources and gives you a lot of points. Otherwise, you might not be able to reach up with the other players. And you also need some kind of a plan to at least go back to, let's say, reputation 5 or something like that. It's something to strive for. It's even better if you get 0 points from it. It's actually almost impossible to play. I mean, there are some buildings that will make it possible, but it's normally very hard to play an evil guy strat and then end up with positive points for reputation. But as long as you don't get too many negative points, you might be able to make it. The only thing you really have to remember is that you don't need to go crazy on the black market strategy. Like, you can even get at like 2 reputation and then start clawing back thanks to maybe you can go to 0 if you're really fast at going down to 0 and flip maybe 2 or 3 depths afterwards. But normally it's just good to go to the black market, go down to reputation 3 or 2, capture some meeples, spend those coins over here, and then start to claw back thanks to the good resources that you get from the black market. Because I didn't talk about it, but of course this action is bonkers. 3 coins and -1 rep for like 2 marble and 2 other resources is incredibly good. This should be the spot you look at the most if you try to go for a capturing a slower strategy. The first one can of course be good when there's like 2 gold over here. For 1 marble is not great, but sometimes you do it. The black market is the fastest way to get marble, but it's not the fastest way to get gold. Normally you still want to get gold from mines. If you get more, that's good, alright, but getting to the mines normally nets you more gold and faster than just going to the black market, on average, I would say. So, that's just it. I mean, I could talk for hours about capturing meeples, but I want to keep this video short enough. This game is a medium weight game, it's not a heavy game, and normally I'm able to explain a heavy game in half an hour, so I would like not to go too long, but there's a lot to talk about in this game, so this is why I still like it a lot. Oh, did I tell you that playing online you can play a whole game in half an hour? Half an hour. This is why this game got so addicted to me. There's the right amount of strategy, tactics, and enough replayability, actually quite a lot of it, packed in half an hour game in 4 players online. This is just crazy. I love real-time games of Architects, and I suggest you to play it more if you haven't already. Now, let's just talk about like the overall strategy in Architects, and I'll be real quick. If you want to win at this game early and you want to understand more about the game, but you want something like a cookie cutter strategy that can work in pretty much all of the Architect's aim, here you go. You have just to accumulate resources, hammering these spots. You get 5, maybe 6 buildings, but I think 5 can work most of the time. Among them, 1 should be expensive, maybe even 2. You just build them up. You just get 2, maybe 3 apprentices, depending on the different icons that you need in a game. And that's it. I mean, you don't need a special plan. As long as you get something like a miner. Is that a miner? Yeah. A woodcutter, a stone cutter, jeweler, guys like this. Even the traders. The traders are pretty good to get this marble. You don't need to get too much creative. Maybe you get 1 time to the black market to get the marble you need, and then you just get resources and build them and try to understand the pace of the game the first few times that you try this strategy out. This strategy works in pretty much all of the games that I tried. It actually works very well, so try it out yourself. But remember that there are, of course, other strategy that you might want to explore later on. So I'm just going to talk about them real quick. One strategy is, again, hitting the black market and being a bad guy overall. You probably want to capture a bit. Sometimes the silversmith will be enough, but a lot of the time you want to capture the other meeples just to save time. There is the debt collector strategy. As long as you get probably at least 2 of them, you can actually go down to 0 rep and even lose more rep and then flip like 4, 5, sometimes even 6 debts. I've seen games with more, but I don't think that the other players were playing that well. So that's what happens. And at that point, you can get a good windfall of resources at some point in the game, and then you start building. That's something pretty decent. You can also get not the traders, but the merchants. The merchants are actually pretty good if you can accumulate coins. Once again, you can get them by capturing other meeples, but remember to capture at least 4 per each coin you spend. At least. If you can get more, that's even better. So there are a lot of nuances to the game, actually, which is something that, of course, I love. Let's talk about the cathedral strategy real quick. In my opinion, the cathedral is actually pretty strong, and you can go for it, but you need to have at least 2/3 other buildings that you have to build after you finish up the cathedral, and you need a plan for that. It can work really well, of course, with some of the acolytes that will let you get resources. Actually, the clay one is, in my opinion, by far the worst because you cannot spend clay while climbing the cathedral. But the other two, the stone one and even the silver one is alright, but the stone one and the wood one are the better ones. This one is also incredible just because it gives you back buildings. You can basically keep 2 of the ones that you want right from the start in your back pocket and just cycle the other one without having to lose actions on the workshop. So this one is going to save you actions. All of them are going to save you actions, but this one is actually decently versatile and it will let you not lose actions in the early game on the workshop, which is pretty good. The strategy that I played in this game is actually pretty cool, I think. I started with the 2 reputation squire, which is one of my favorite apprentices. This one will let you do something pretty interesting in the game. So, well, I was also able to get another squire, which is of course pretty good, but the first one was the most important in my overall plan, because with this one, you know for sure that 2 times the market will reset, and probably another 2 times then thanks to the black market if you're playing against the good players. So that means that it's 8 reputation for free, which means that you should be able to reach spot 14 easily and probably exceed it, which means that you can get actually debts. So if somebody else capture your meeples, you don't have to wait for them to discharge them over here, because you actually risk a black market reset at an ill time for you, which will not trigger the squire. But you can go here and just get one step back on reputation and one debt, because you know you're going to exceed 14, so you know you will be able to remove the debt for free, which is actually pretty good. So something to remember with this plan. Another thing that is good, of course, is that I had the palace. So the palace will give me 1 gold, which is basically 1 point for the strategy that I played, but it can also feed into other buildings, of course. You gain 1 gold per 4 steps, which means that with the strategy, I get for sure 4 gold, 3 gold from the 12 spot. It also means that this Thieves' Den, which can sometimes be very costly because of the 2 steps back on the reputation track, is actually very good, because I know once again that I'm going to exceed 14, so I can plan to play it probably after the palace. That would be a good idea. That's what I did actually in this game. Then you can play Thieves' Den, take 2 steps back, and you will get those steps up on the track once again when the black market will trigger once again. So you can make plans. You don't need to make big plans, because again, the game is fast. But as you see, even in this game, I made some plans thanks to what I was given. This pattern actually is one of my favorite ones in most games, but when you have the 2 reputation squire, it's not really good. I got it only because it had an hammer, and I needed a hammer, and I might use this one if I needed to take too many depths, or if any buildings that I'm going to draw thanks to the drafting room will be any other loose reputation buildings. So maybe I will need a small bump. The patron is also very good at the end of the game if you're not playing a squire strategy, of course. It's very good at the end of the game if you finish the game having built all of the buildings that you have available, but you know that there are still like 1-2 action left because the other players need to get a bit of resources before triggering the end of the game. You can just pile up guys on the king's storehouse and ramp up the reputation track real quick thanks to some stone you should have hopefully got in your back pocket. So that's just a small example of what you can do. Basically, my suggestion is to be remember that Architects is not an engine building game. Tempo is very important. Try to adapt to it. Buildings and the cathedral are very good ways to control tempo, but be careful not to use them too early. Capturing meeple is something that can be good only when done properly, so you need to capture a lot of meeples and you need to have a plan to spend those coins on, which normally means going for an evil route. And when you go evil, you better off have a plan, like have debt collectors or other stuff, or just use wisely the black market. Otherwise, you might get stuck with negative reputation and not recover from that. And that's it. Just remember that, and hopefully you will enjoy Architects of the West Kingdom as much as I enjoyed it recently. So, see you next time. Myers out. Bye-bye.